Hey folks, it is February 17th, and today we are reading in our Bible reading Leviticus 1, 2, and 3, also Proverbs 27, and Hebrews chapter 2. We're going to be going through the book of Leviticus in the next several days, and I want to look at this and realize what God is really looking at when He teaches His royal priesthood here. We just finished the book of Exodus and how God, His plan was to take His people out of slavery, and free them. And what an awesome story that we've heard and got to experience through that. We are going to now look at some boundaries of how He has set in the priesthood, and they were going to be teaching the people, God's people, through this. And so they were to bring sacrifices, their offerings, to Him. And so He was offering boundaries, teaching them these, and helping them to understand, here's how I want you to bring your offerings. But you know what? Chapter 1 is about burnt offerings. Chapter 2 is about grain offerings. Chapter 3 is about fellowship offerings, and it keeps on going, more and more offerings and rules and regulations. But you know what? I look at it in a different way. Instead of here's what you don't do and here are rules, and He's setting boundaries of things that you can do and how He wants to help you and protect you and guard you. And man, it's when you look at it in that light, it's awesome. I think about April and I, our first child was a dog, and we loved our dog Elsie. Elsie was a precious little basset hound mixed with beagle, whatever mix. And we taught our dog to stay within the boundary of our yard. It was quite impressive, actually, kind of fun to watch her. She would go along the street on the grass and not get out of her yard, including in the neighbors, where the neighbors connected, or the alley. She stayed in her boundaries. There were no fences, there were no electronic devices to keep her within those boundaries, but we had trained her that was the boundary, because it was not safe for her to go into the street. It was not safe for her to just roam around the neighborhood. And so we trained her to know her boundaries, and she stayed within those boundaries. There were some times that we would have to nudge her and remind her, but she became well known that she knows her boundaries. And you know, when we see someone and we have a relationship with someone who has good boundaries, man, it's so much better than, like, I think about times when I've maybe been in a meeting with someone who has children or whatever that have no boundaries, and it's distracting, it's frustrating. And so when we have good boundaries, it's so much easier to communicate and have a relationship, and God wants to set those up for us. I want to share with you actually from our Proverbs verse here, Proverbs 27. In verse 12 he says, "The prudent see danger and they take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay for the penalty." And I think about how God has set up boundaries for us to protect us, to guide us, to direct us, to protect our well-being, for whatever that looks like, and so that we don't go just directly into danger, but that we realize, oh, I see danger, or I see something that is going to cause distractions or be a problem for others, and I'm going to change my course because I know that boundary shouldn't be crossed. And so, but he says the foolish, they don't pay attention to those boundaries, and they pay the penalty. We don't want to be people like that just go and cross boundaries all the time. We want to be people who are helping other people to be directed to look to God and be obedient to His boundaries. He sets up all kinds of boundaries to protect us. And I think about when you're driving down the road, you see a road that has guardrails on it, but you don't question, why did they put those guardrails on the road, especially in the mountains or the hills? You know that, hey, those guardrails are a boundary that keeps me safe. And it's kind of like that within God's world, and how he wants us to stay in the boundaries to protect us, not to restrict us or to cut us off, but to help us. And I hope that as you're a parent, maybe, that you're teaching your kids boundaries and what that looks like. And if you're, I hope that you're discipling people and that you're teaching people God's boundaries. And then maybe it's you're questioning, what are God's boundaries? I don't know what those look like. I would love to spend some time chatting with you about that. We would, any of us ministers here, would love to chat with you about that. So contact us if you have questions about that. We would love to share with you about what God's boundaries look like. And so I want to encourage you to focus on that and kind of grow in that. And as you go through this book of Leviticus, to look at that as God protecting you. And until we see each other again, you are sent.